Good afternoon, Sonia. How are you
Hi.
today?
Hi, Leon. I'm good. And how are you?
I'm very well. Looking forward to our discussion today. It's kind of, we don't know where we're going, but we are going to discover where we're going.
Well, we never know where we're going, but the thing is, we spoke about a lot about the inner child, the abuse, and we did take quite a long time between the last time we recorded to today. And I have a sense that it takes time for this to settle. But the question I was asked is, what is the difference between like the repetitive trauma or the like the abuse is a repetitive trauma where I explained that I didn't really know I was traumatized, and the trauma that most people know as what a trauma is, the one that is recognizable or seemingly recognizable, the one that people fear, the accidents, the sudden illnesses, the sudden deaths, that type of trauma.
Yeah. So we can add a few words to that. We can also say those that are evidentially a trauma. In other words, we can notice the person is limping, or we can notice the person is withdrawn. There's an emotional thing. It's quite visible versus a kind of invisible traumas that we're not aware of until we discover them, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then
So,
is the trauma that we touched on it last time. A parent loses a child. That is a trauma to a parent, the child being lost. And you, as the sibling, spoke about how do the siblings react to that. So that is a trauma that's in the family. So because this is a personal story, I think my story wouldn't be complete without me talking about the accident that happened when I was 9 years old.
right. Okay. So what happened?
So, as you recall, I started my early schooling career in the convent, and my parents had actually moved to another town in Namibia, Grootfontein, which everybody these days knows as an army base.
Yeah.
It wasn't an army base, or it might have been an army base at the time that we lived there, but I wasn't completely aware of it. And what actually happened, it was Easter weekend, long weekend, and friends of mine that I knew from the convent had come to visit their cousins, which we were also friendly with. So we all decided to go to the swimming pool and meet up at the swimming pool and have a good day around the pool, which was going to be fun. But the pool was actually closed to the public. So we were the only people, the only children in the pool. So there were 4 or 5 of us little girls. I was 9, so I think we were aged between 8 and 12 maybe. So we were, it was the 2 families of cousins and myself. We were having a good day at the pool and we were playing catches. So, and it was great fun to go up to the diving board, the 3-meter diving board, and stand there. And if somebody came up the stairs, you'd be on the diving board, you'd jump into the water, and it was a good way to get away. So I was standing at the top of the diving board, but now it was wet, and it was wooden planks, and there was no railing between the front of those wooden planks, and you could have actually dived off the wooden planks into the water. That would have been possible. But I slipped. I didn't make it onto the diving board, and I slipped and I fell. And the next thing I knew, I woke up in the change rooms, and everybody was panicked around me. I had gone there with my bicycle. My biggest concern was, how do I get home with my bicycle? So I still wanted to go home on my bicycle. I had not realized what had happened. So what had happened is I actually slipped and I fell onto the corner of the swimming pool, onto the concrete with my head, and then into the pool. So obviously everybody was panicked. Then they dragged me home to the cousin's home that was very close by. And then they took me to hospital. And all the doctor did was, I had a wound that was bleeding, and he stitched up the wound. It was Saturday afternoon, Saturday before Easter. So everybody, even the doctors, it was like, it was calm. It was quiet. On the Sunday, the doctor said to my mom if she wanted to take me home for Easter, it was okay. And my mom didn't feel right about taking me home because to her, I was asleep most of the time. I wasn't fully awake. She'd come there to visit and I wasn't awake. So she felt it was safe to leave me in the hospital. So the Easter weekend, I was in the hospital. I was more probably not awake than awake. On the Tuesday, the doctors changed, and the doctor that came on duty asked whether x-rays had been taken. And they hadn't been taken, so he took x-rays and he realized that I had a severe head injury and there was bleeding on the brain, interior of the skull and exterior of the skull, and he just felt he didn't want to touch this. He also didn't want me to drive, or my parents to take me to Windhoek, which was the closest, biggest hospital, by car. And so they organized a flight to Windhoek, and I was taken up in the Catholic hospital, which was next to the Catholic school that I was actually a student at previously. So, and even the specialist then said, there's nothing we can do. It's too late. We can't operate. Whatever we do now, it is going to be a mess. So I basically lay in a semi-coma in that hospital for a month before anything else happened. What I do recall is in my few moments that I did wake up was my mother sitting there. She had taken off work and she was basically at the hospital most of the time. And then I remember one night I was what I would call today a near-death experience. I was given the choice to actually stay or leave. And the decision to stay was mine at that point. I mean, I'm always this one who says, I can do everything in life. Give me the worst thing to do in life and I can do it. And to this day, I remember saying, if there is one person that I can help in life, I have a purpose in life. And for that purpose, I will stay, no matter what. Now, the prognosis was, what my mother was told was that I would not come out of hospital with any sense of normalcy. I would probably be institutionalized. If I had the ability to live, or if I came through alive, I would be institutionalized. And I do know, as it has been given back to me, the nuns came to me quite often to visit, that they had a prayer circle that night when I actually had this interaction with what I, as a child, did not know was a near-death experience. I can describe it, but that's not the purpose of today's story. So the prognosis was I would be institutionalized because I would be basically a vegetable, because they couldn't operate. the blood had congealed on the outside of the skull. So there was a break in the skull from the front to the back. On my right-hand side, the artery had gone in between, and that's how the blood had come on both sides of the skull. The blood on the inside of the skull was more or less absorbed by the body fluids that have absorbed it. And I did have an operation where they took out the blood on the outside of the skull, and that's as much as intervention as they did, except for super heavy medication. That super heavy medication was very, shall I say, toxic for a body of a 9-year-old. But it was a desperation of the doctors who didn't know whatever else they could do. So in all honesty, it was the best that they could do to keep me alive. And seeing that I would be a vegetable anyway, it didn't matter. Well, after 6 weeks, I did regain more and more consciousness. They still decided that I wasn't going to be able to go back into normal life and into normal schooling. So I then stayed with an aunt who was a nurse for another 2 months before I was able to go back to school. So the prophecy was that I would be, shall I say, I would be retarded. We need to know that this was 60 years ago.
Yes.
And 60 years ago, we didn't have the rehabs, we didn't have the possibilities that are available today. So looking at it is the body did its complete healing by itself, which I think is a miracle in itself. So
absolutely.
I'm absolutely grateful for the non-intervention and allowing the body to heal itself, which is a philosophy I have even for today. I went back to school, and
after almost 2 months, or
after losing out a whole term at school, I went back for the last term of the year. No, actually the 2 last terms of the year, and my school marks were the same as they always were. So from a scholastic academic point of view, it did not seem as if I had a lot of injury. Where I noticed the injury was with the piano, with going back to playing piano. So I had piano teaching before the accident, and I went back to my piano lessons afterwards, and I couldn't play the piano anymore. So that's where I noticed, and I physically noticed that my left hand was a lot slower than my right hand. So the trauma was on the right-hand side, so my left side of the body was compromised. I could no longer catch a ball. I could no longer do simple tasks where both hands had to coordinate. I couldn't pour a cup of tea. I couldn't pour water. So it was that type of thing, is my hand-eye coordination didn't work. So that is not something that anybody would have picked up, but I picked it up because I got frustrated, because I did not understand. I was a 9-year-old child who did not understand that if you try and pour water into a cup, that it was always next to the cup. And then there was this, can't you get it straight? My parents did not recognize that that was as a result of the brain injury that happened. And this stayed with me well into my 30s. It was always the laughing stock of everybody. So I think the trauma is the accident that happened. Had nothing apparent been different afterwards, it would have been an incident in my life that I could have gone and left behind.
Mm.
But because of the non-ability or disability of my left and my right not coordinating, a lot in my life changed. Sports I couldn't do anymore. I couldn't, when I played tennis, I couldn't see where the ball would hit the racket. I couldn't play. So any ball game, any eye-hand coordination didn't quite work anymore. And it seems a small thing, but when you add it up and you daily don't know what your left hand and your right hand are doing with one another, it's very, very frustrating for a child who does not understand, and for parents who do not understand that this trauma, that this head injury actually left a mark. The only thing was she can still do academically well, but they did not realize how everything else in my life slowed down completely.
So the consequences of the trauma, the primary trauma, those consequences turned into a secondary traumatic continuous experience.
Yes, yes. And it was something that even in my marriage, my husband used to laugh at me because I couldn't do things together. And it left a little bit of a, you are stupid, you can't do things well. Why can't you get it right? It left, there was no understanding. So a trauma really becomes a trauma when there is no support. When, say for instance, you have a crime-related trauma which was where I worked at, and there is a support, there is a matter of control, there is a matter of understanding, then the trauma dissipates. But because there was no support, and because there was no understanding, and in fact there was a lot of, shall I say, criticism around it, it became another shameful experience for me. The shame was, you can't do this, you're too stupid. There was, and that overtook the miracle of you're alive. You are not in an institution. You're not a vegetable. You're actually leading quite a normal life. So that miracle was completely negated by this left and right not coordinating. And it still catches me today. When I'm tired, I fall easily because my left foot doesn't lift properly. So if I'm not focused completely on getting all the movements in my left coordinate with my right, accidents happen. And so that, I would say that physical, constant focus on how do these two sides coordinate had a lot of physical strain on my body, and also mental strain, because now things that need to work normally do not work normally, because my left side just does not coordinate well with my right side. And the right side, although it works, the eye-hand movement doesn't coordinate. So things fall out of my hands, pots fall out of my hands. And so I have a lot of other accidents that happen on a continuous basis.
Oh,
today I understand, and today I have made peace with that. But that is because I understand what happened today. I'm adult today. I have worked at it. But the young child did not understand.
No. And up to a very advanced adult stage, it remained kind of a challenge until you had full understanding and comprehension of what actually occurred.
Yes, and also when I became a mother, I was always scared of dropping the child, because my hands would do their own things, my arms would do their own things. So I always had to take extra precaution on everything that I did. So did the accidents get less? Yes. Do I let a lot of glasses fall? Actually, not anymore. So
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
able to focus without all the extra strength. And the brain does take on some learning and some connectivity again. So from where I was when I was 9 years old to where I am now, obviously the brain has done a lot of restoration. The other thing that happened was that I had lost my short-term memory. So today it's okay because we all lose our short-term memory.
Yes.
But as a 9-year-old, that was very difficult because I couldn't remember when I did things. And so it was a case of, are you stupid that you don't remember? I had zero short-term memory and I had to retrain my memory. So when I'm stressed, when things are not well, my memory is the first place where I notice that things are not going well. When I start not knowing where I put things, then I know I'm too stressed. I need to slow down.
So that brings me to a brave question, courageous question. I'm not sure we can cut this out if it doesn't work, but I want to ask, as a result of the trauma, you now had to learn extraordinary skills, or shall we say, you had to employ extraordinary focus to develop the same skills that came for other people as a natural development.
Yes.
Now, the question is, what was good about that? How did that make you extraordinary?
Understanding disability. And being kind when it comes to seeing disability. What was very interesting is my son, my stepson, developed a reading disability. And I noticed it very quickly. And again, I had the same frustration. We're talking about 40 years, 40 plus years now. And I knew this child was extremely bright because he understood things, but he struggled with reading and he also struggled with writing. And then what I saw in him, that rebellion, I recognized in myself was, don't they see I can do it? Why do I have to do it in a certain way? And not being recognized for that which has gone well, but being judged for that which has gone wrong. And that made the disability in him bigger, to the end that when we got to high school, he had the reading grade of a grade 2. So my question always was, how does this child manage without being able to read and write properly? And that was always my frustration. And it became our frustration because nobody wanted to understand. At that time, dyslexia was not understood. I was very, very fortunate that in what is today grade 7, the last year of primary school, I met a teacher who at that time was working with a reading program that she was testing. And she promised that she could up his reading grade from grade 2 and see how far she could develop it. So she could increase his reading grade to a grade 6. So she could increase it for quite a number of time, but it took a whole year to do that. But that was a lot of catching up to do. And then we moved and I couldn't continue the program because I didn't find anybody else to continue the program. So when he went to high school, he did not have the proper reading grade and it did not quite increase proportionately, because dyslexia is very little understood. It wasn't understood at that point. And so I was basically his only support, understanding the frustration he was dealing with and being able to help him emotionally with this disability, because dyslexia is regarded as a disability. And then the way we studied was that I used to read the information to him. He also had extremely good listening skills in class. So all his stuff was by memory. So he couldn't really study like other children could, which impacted, obviously, his career choice going forward. I'm happy to say today he's an avid reader and he has a very good position where he works in his company. So we were able to overcome that disability as well.
Thanks to his mom.
Yes. No, I do take the accolade on that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful story. So you're looking with proud eyes towards him, and in the same time, systemically, you have developed some extraordinary meta skills in the process of sensitivity, of understanding, of connection with people that are struggling with their disabilities.
And also learning that trauma itself can generate disabilities, which is something that's not spoken about. Because it is said that dyslexia can result as a result of trauma. And I fully believe that. So understanding that trauma can be very debilitating. Yes. Trauma can be very debilitating. So, and I think that is something one needs to recognize, whether it's physical trauma or whether it's mental, emotional trauma.
And what skills, extraordinary skills, that you developed to overcome the short-term memory issues? What was your coping skill?
So I never thought about developing coping skills. I just developed some really good routines, like putting certain things in certain places on a regular basis, but I even forget to do that. So that's another chapter for another fun day.
Wonderful.
The thing is, it can be very difficult for the people around. And I think that is really, it's very difficult for people around to understand, because they don't understand. When you break, human, amount of glasses, and somebody just says, do you need to break all the glasses? Do you, it's not something that happens on purpose. It's just, it falls out of your hand and there's nothing I can do. So these days I'm a little bit better. I can catch better.
And what happened to sport lately?
Well, I basically gave up on sports. It wasn't fun doing a lot of sports. So I also developed fibromyalgia, which is also a combination of trauma buildup in the body. So when, again, fibromyalgia is something that's very easily understood today. When I had all these aches and pains in the body and my muscles were so stiff and things didn't happen the way my body should work, it was like there was no definite, what you call it, identification of what is going on in the body. There was no no direct, this is what's wrong. So there is no treatment. And even for today, fibromyalgia is not really treatable in a good way. So once I recognized it, I now do what I need to do to keep my body subtle as much as I can, pain-free as I can. I almost live a pain-free life right now. So the other thing I did not mention was that one thing that remained after the accident was constant severe headaches. And then it was diagnosed that I had extreme high blood pressure. I mean, from the age of 11, I had blood pressure that was higher than an old person's blood pressure, which were one of the causes of the headaches, which at that stage, they thought it was one of the causes of the medication that was given that my body didn't quite work with. So that was an after effect. So there were a lot of medical after effects that I had to contend with, to the point that the doctor actually said, the gynecologist said, I should not have children because of my high blood pressure. I did end up having 3 children. The medication for the blood pressure didn't work for me. And then I went the homeopathic route. So from the homeopathic route, that is where I started having the interest in alternate medication, in working in alternate fields of understanding and understanding the mind-body connection in a different format. So today I don't check my blood pressure. I don't have the headaches. I feel fairly well, and I manage all that with alternate medication, including aromatherapy oils or things like that. So I have found different ways of dealing with my health issues. So I should have pegged off at the age of 40. That was my lifespan expectancy. So I'm still here today. So I guess there's more work to be done for me. So if there's anything I can say is I'm here today to do more work. And my original agreement where I help just one person, I still help one person at a time. And I am fulfilling that life agreement that I made as a 9-year-old.
Absolutely extraordinary, beautiful, beautiful, wonderful story. And in that way, we can see the threads of the hero's journey from a young age, going through the challenges and the thresholds and the things in life that are just there to help you, to up your skill and prepare yourself for what you eventually will do, and that is to help other people to heal. A separate question, maybe you want to edit that separately, because there's so many people with fibromyalgia, I'm just wondering to say a few more sentences about that. At what age did that start?
Well, if I look at the pain component, I was never pain-free after the accident. So
very early then, yeah.
Very early then. I can say that in my early 20s, I had severe muscular pains all over. So I would say that it was already then, but because it was never identified as such, it was also never looked at as such. And in fact, my husband at the time, he was very irritated about this woman who had constant pain. And I understand that it must have been difficult for him to have somebody who's constantly tired, somebody who is constantly in pain, and somebody who is not in her full life force. Yet, I believe I did the best I could, even in that time. And I am actually grateful that he did not allow me to go into that, allowing me to actually take time out, whatever, so that I could push through the pain. I could manage all the housework. I could manage the children. I could do everything, no matter what. So there were times when I was absolutely exhausted, not able to do it, and I had to do it anyway. So in a way, I'm very grateful for not accepting my pain barrier and pushing me through it.
And so an adjacent question, of course, is, and maybe that's a chapter for another day, but just briefly in a minute form, the underlying theory that the West and the medicine of the West addresses symptoms primarily, but the medicine of the East and the philosophy of the East primarily look at the causal of the symptoms. And maybe, I'm suggesting, maybe a combination of the West and the East approach on healing could bring us to the field, the systemic field, where we can discover the causal and therefore perhaps also relieve the symptomatic experience. Would you kind of agree with that?
I do believe that there is absolute stunning work that is done, especially today. If that accident had happened today, my healing process would have been a lot quicker, and it would have been able, people would have been able to handle it a lot better. There was nothing else available. So I'm here, I'm today, I'm grateful for whatever medicine was used to get me to the point where I am today in terms of I survived. If we look at homeopathic medicine, which was my first going into natural medication, the homeopathy, a lot of it is German, if we look at it. So it got me from a point of being dependent on medication that was having so many side effects in my body, to the effect that I was feeling I was going mad. So the blood pressure was nicely reduced, but I in my body felt a sense of going mad. So I felt I couldn't continue on that route. And I then started the homeopathic route, and my blood pressure was very, very well managed until my last pregnancy. And then during the pregnancy, obviously, it got out of control again, but I then went back into homeopathic medicine. So that's where my love for alternate medicine started. So I did also study African medicines. So I studied a lot of natural medication for the body. I do not use it anymore in terms of prescribing it to clients or using it with clients, because I found that I wanted to focus my field on doing the mental, emotional work so that the body would take its own healing and work on that path. And then obviously people have the freedom to choose where they want to, who they want to go, and where they want to find the body support healing.
Yeah. Yeah. So primarily, if I'm a migraine sufferer, I would take that medicine to relieve me of the symptoms. But ultimately, after so many repetitive experiences and incidents and patterns that I'm working through, ultimately it will take me back to my mind so that I can look what's in my mind and how my mind links to the systemic field, and what that leads me to look at as an internal component of my healing process. So I think the beauty of the work that we both are doing is that we have access to the internal world, the mind that causes some expressions that are unexplainable sometimes, and yet there's some answers to be found if we look deep enough.
And there are so many books available that explain the mental emotional component and how it reacts in our body. What is the trauma, the repetitive thinking that destroys proper cellular function in our body. So that is why I focus on that, because when we heal mentally, emotionally, our body is in a much better state of healing. And I fully believe that if I hadn't started this path, I wouldn't be here today, because I would have probably given in to depression, which I suffered for as well. And I would have probably not been doing what I'm doing now. So I'm eternally grateful for having gone onto this healing route where we can help, especially with the systemic work, because looking at the mental emotional component in the ancestry, how much we can help and how we can actually, without it being major things, lead people into a healthier lifestyle.
Beautiful.
So that's my story for today. So thank you, Leon, for listening to my story. And you always ask the question, how did you get to Family Constellation? So it's been a long road, but this is why I'm here today. And this morning I was actually looking at my trauma healing workshop that I'm putting together. And so the question is, why do something like healing trauma, which is a lot of the family constellation work is really healing the traumas in the generation. And the first answer is for mental emotional wellness. And with that comes more resilience, with that comes better relationships. And then I believe family constellations is the ideal, or systemic work is the ideal work for also your spiritual connections. So when we have all that in alignment, where more can we go? How better can we live? For me, this is the ultimate. Thank you for joining this journey.
Thank you for sharing it.